Hello and welcome to The Art of Aging, which is part of the Abundant Aging podcast series from United Church Homes. On this show, we look at what it means to age in America and in other places around the world with positive and empowering conversations that challenge, encourage, and inspire everyone everywhere to age with abundance. And today we're particularly excited that we have not just one, but two amazing guests for the show. Lauren Dunning and Caitlin MacLean are here to represent the good works of the Milken Institute, with Lauren serving as a director with Milken Center for the Future of Aging, and Caitlin as a senior director of Milken's Financial Innovation Labs. And this is pretty important, guys. We're seeing the convergence of aging and financial innovation in one here. And this is something we've highlighted on the podcast before, that the worlds of finance and aging are converging because more and more stresses are being placed on the nation's health system and on families as they face the costs of long-term care, many of which, as we know, in fact, there really is no long-term care benefit in Medicare. So, Lauren, Caitlin, welcome.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Awesome. And just a reminder that this podcast series is sponsored by the United Church Homes Ruth Frost Parker Center for Abundant Aging. To learn more about the center, including our annual symposium in October, visit www.unitedchurchhomes/Parker-Center. All right, so let's get into it. Big subject, as always. We love big subjects for this show. But I'm really so glad that you guys have given some of your time to maybe give a little bit of insight to this and to see how Milken is addressing it. So can you tell our listeners first about the Milken Institute and your respective centers?
Happy to. And again, thank you for having us. So the Milken Institute, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank, and we focus very broadly on how people can advance having a meaningful life. And so we look at a wide variety of topics, but really predominantly through a financial lens. And we do that through three pillars. So we have finance as a pillar, health, and then philanthropy. So largely stemming from our chairman, Mike Milken, his time in the capital markets, as well as his interests as a philanthropist. So we're probably most well known for kind of two core activities, our convening power. So our annual flagship event is our global conference. It's about 4,000 people in Los Angeles each year, looking at a wide variety of social issues. And then alongside that, also regional summits where we have different offices around the world, including places like Singapore, Abu Dhabi, London. So that's kind of the convening side of the house. And then we also do research as a think tank, and we have a variety of different centers under each of our pillars that do white papers, indices. My team, we do what we call financial innovation labs, which we can talk about. But really kind of the idea is to have both research and convening that can lead to meaningful results. And I'll let Lauren talk about one of those centers, which is our Center for the Future of Aging.
Absolutely. As you mentioned earlier, I am with the Future of Aging. I sit within MI Health, and we work to advance healthy longevity and financial security for all through research, convenings, multi-sector partnerships, and the elevation of high-impact policies and practices. And so we collaborate really with leaders across all of the domains that have a hand in aging, which, as we know, it spans, as we keep saying, finance and aging. And so we work with business, philanthropy, nonprofit, governments, et cetera, to build a better future for all ages. And we do this through 4 practice areas where we work to promote healthspan, advance integrated care solutions, improve dementia care, and accelerate financial longevity preparedness. And this past year, I was especially excited to collaborate with Caitlin and her team on some really exciting work on middle income senior housing. And so we're excited to dive into that with you a little bit later.
Yeah, and it's I think just for our listeners, this is really I think the Milken, the Center, the Future on Aging group that Lauren's a part of has really been part of on our radar for the last few years. They've been doing amazing work in the space. They convene an awesome group of people. But it was just in the last year where I really just got a sense of that full picture of what Milken does and how these different disparate parts come together. And it seems like you really are kind of putting the right type of investigations in place for a very important issue. And I've said before on this show, and probably to you guys, that I'm not aware of any trend happening today outside of climate change that really is predictive of future wants, future stressors, really future anything than this idea of aging. And the fact that we have this kind of people call it all sort of silver tsunami, which we hate because it's kind of an ageist term. Tsunamis are destructive,
Yeah.
or taking the python and things like that. So is that the type of thing that Milken kind of looks at and says, "Yep, we want to look at that. This is so obvious. This is so big. This is right for Milken."
Yeah, I mean, we've, believe it or not, been at it for a while. About 13 years ago, our founder, Paul Irving, started our work at the Center for the Future of Aging. So we've been looking at this and really seeing rapid population aging, and we can give you all the statistics about, right, why it's important, right? We've seen 1,000% growth rate between 2010 and 2020 for the 65 plus population. We're slated, right, to cross that line where we'll have more older people than younger people. And we saw this coming, but we're really like, we're sitting there today, right? It was the horizon, and now we're here, and we need all of these systems changes. And that fact that we're in this global megatrend that everyone's starting to recognize, right? As you said, in the same breath as climate change, globalization, the impact of AI, all of these things, it's here now. And I think that that's just accelerating our work at the future of aging and giving it, greater urgency and helping us spur innovative collaborations like the work we did with Caitlin's group. And then I also know that we're working across lots and lots of big, important issues, just like aging and sort of the need for housing and care that presents, but other issues too.
Yeah, yeah, and it seems like just talking again about sort of Milken and the spirit of what you
Yeah.
guys do. I've observed. I've been working in aging, health, age tech pretty much my entire career, and I just, gosh, since 2015, it seems like we've been kind of pounding on the table saying, pay attention to this, pay attention to this, pay attention to this. Milken's also an organization that's a pay attention to this, pay attention to this, pay attention to this thing. And now, the magic number out there is kind of like in 2034, we're going to have more people over the age of 65 than we will under the age of 18. And that's 10 years away. And it's interesting because as I see your convenings happening, and I see that convenings happening with people like AARP and Stanford and so on, every year, the group seems to get bigger. Every year, representatives from new, like companies, they kind of show up, kind of for the first time, right? Suddenly you're getting XYZ company to come in, or here's a food manufacturer, here food is medicine, all of these. I mean, are you kind of seeing the same thing? Do you think that Milken kind of like is at the ready to kind of like welcome those people as they come into these investigations? And is that kind of your MO? Yes, nodding heads.
Yeah, I would say, I would say, generally across the Institute, and Lauren can certainly talk about the Center for the Future of Aging, but, kind of very similar, built into our DNA, is trying to bring in, kind of a diverse set of stakeholders to look at a specific issue, because at the end of the day, we can't solve things on our own. And so fundamentally, we have to collaborate, we have to partner, and you need champions, not just in a specific industry or sector, but you need them across the board, right? So I think that the interesting thing about the Institute and the platform that we have is that we do have such a strong finance network, investor network, the policy angle, the corporate angle, as you said, Mike, not just kind of the traditional kind of corporates in the aging space, but also thinking about, kind of every industry, because as we've talked about, this silver tsunami is affecting everyone and every sector. And so I think that's the value add for us, is to be able to look at this holistically and say, everyone's doing amazing things, but perhaps in their own silos. And so can we bring everyone together and say, if there's a couple of solutions to get to a scale, can we all collaborate in a way and kind of move as one? And so, kind of building out some of those other kind of champions, maybe the unusual suspects outside of just preaching to the choir, but certainly so that we do that across the Institute and every looking at every kind of topic that we focus on. But certainly Lauren and the team at the Center for the Future of Aging, that was sort of a fundamental kind of premise to set up the center in the first place.
Yeah, and I want to go into some of the investigation areas that you're talking about, Lauren, in the center in particular. Can you can you just say again what those four focus areas are? And I know that choosing those four focus areas must have come from, deciding about 300 focus areas that you could probably, work with, right? So what are those four areas, and why were they chosen?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking at promoting health span, advancing integrated care solutions, improving dementia care, and accelerating financial longevity preparedness. And really, these four practice areas, they've developed over time through the work that we've done, looking at the intersection of healthy longevity and financial security. And we know that there's a big feedback loop between those two things and a real need to connect them together. And so each of those four areas connects those two pieces in a meaningful way and in a really robust way that informs the way we also create projects or partnerships or different types of solutions under each of those areas. And so those four areas are informed by the many years of work we've done, and then also processes with our stakeholders to continue refining our role and where our unique blend of being a nonpartisan convener is needed to bring unique thinking to the table so we can harness that collective brain power. We have an incredible group supporting us, which is our Future of Aging Advisory Board, which is comprised of incredible leaders in the field that are really looking to drive innovation as we work to respond to some of the challenges, but also bring about some of the benefits of demographic change and population aging.
Yeah, and I was going to go to that, Lauren. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because and this is where I love having both of you on the show. Just the intersection of longevity and financial security. And I look at my son, and I think, look, he's not only going to have a far better chance of living past 100 years old than all of us, but many of those years are going to be healthy. So you have these things like health span. You have things like integrated care solutions, which I read as more like holistic, actual health care, not sick care that we have today, right? Dementia care, which is absolutely a crisis for families and is such, it is such an important issue. And then financial preparedness. So we think about what is the balance of, I guess, of thinking and thought leadership on Milken on addressing the current kind of ability for people to pay for their costs of care, and how much of that is looking at things like how we rethink careers, how we rethink productivity, how we rethink purpose as we get into our 80s and 90s. I mean, there are a lot of tropes around being in your 80s and 90s today, and I can tell you a lot of them just are not true around people's ability to be creative and productive and all the rest of it. So you guys are thinking about both, but is one more important than the other right now?
I think you have to have both, right? As in what we're thinking about is a life course approach, right? It's, we always say we're the Center for the Future of Aging, right? We're focused on future of aging, which involves all generations. And so, yes, we need solutions now for what we know to be aging population that will have more older adults over 65 than we've ever had before, and how we need to adjust our systems of care and our housing and how we think about, life course and purpose and work. But we also know that we're looking to younger generations, not only for solutions and to be a part of how we work through that, because everyone is interconnected, right? We have families, right? And when we talk about, financial preparedness for longer lifespans and shifting demographics, that's, macro issues around, governments. And that's also, right, how we create conditions for people to be able to afford the care their families might need. We're seeing the rise in intergenerational housing for many family members. We know that as we see the number of potential family caregivers for older adults declining, there's going to be a greater role for a smaller number of people for each older adult, and we have to figure out some solutions that work. And so there's those solutions for short term, but then also looking at how we think about what does it mean to have 100-year life, and what do your careers look like, and what does work look like, and what does care look like, and how do we extend our health span so that we're looking to make our years of healthy life match our lifespan. And those are all things that happen earlier, right? Thinking
Yes.
about how we prepare for our longer lives financially, with as an individual and with families, and then as well as for our health, because those are all things that, yes, you can work on them now, but many things it's about behaviors that we start earlier in our lives and how that pays dividends many years later. And so it's the macro, it's the micro, it's the today and also tomorrow.
And I want to get into, one particular project that we worked on just this past year that I think we're really excited about. It's just one, I think, of many projects that you guys do that create impact in the space. But I just want to pick up on what you just said, Lauren, and I want to put Caitlin as our representative from the Financial Innovation Labs on the spot here with a question. Why can't people eat their vegetables? Why can't people, what is But we again with this sort of realization that Medicare does not pay for long-term care needs, that 2/3 of us are going to need to pay out of pocket for long-term care at some point in our lives. That the cost of that is going to probably be over $100,000 in your 80s, in your 90s, in your hundreds, and we're sitting here in our 20s, all of us, and we're saying, what's keeping people from eating their vegetables, you think?
So many issues, right? For vegetables and for long-term care. If I think that there's a few different kind of system-wide changes that have to happen. I think that when we started doing a project a couple of years ago, looking at financing long-term care. And, the challenge was that everyone kept saying to us, you need to blow up the entire system, because the system isn't working and we have to completely change it, because the way that we age, as you said, Mike, the way that we age, how long we're living, the health conditions that we have, but also how we work, how we get paid, how we have health insurance is all changing, and it's very dynamic. And so if we don't have a system that can respond to those dynamic changes, then what we're doing is getting stuck. And I think that that's, kind of where we've seen a lot of the long-term care insurance market in particular, seeing a lot of the insurers leave the market over the past 20 years, having some of the challenges in terms of not really predicting what some of those trends might be and what that might mean for the overall system. And so I think there's those big kind of systemic issues that are sometimes very daunting to change and to try to fix. And then there's just the personal, like, why is Caitlin not eating her vegetables? And because, I don't know, they don't taste good. No, they're not delicious. But I think it's also, why are you not saving? Are you not saving because your employer doesn't have, kind of opportunities for you in terms of the right options for, insurance, kind of long-term care insurance, or the appropriate savings plan? Are there challenges in terms of the cost of housing and how much that has increased over the years, and therefore people not saving, the cost of college? You see generationally a lot of younger people, as we are all in our 20s, younger people who, can't necessarily recover from student loans and then a mortgage in the same way that they, were able to, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so I think that we're seeing both those kind of systemic issues of how do we shift entirely how the public sector as well as the private sector offers insurance in a different way, but also just individually, how do we change our practices, and do we have the right tools to do that? So the work that we had done on long-term care was looking both at, what are some of those options for Medicare and kind of government funded, kind of options. What are things like hybrid plans on the private side to offer that an employer could offer that are not just life insurance or long-term care, but could be a combination of the two. And then as well as, what are the individual kind of savings and kind of options that we all could utilize. So I think from there, then obviously that goes to, as I said, the incredible cost of housing, and looking at, kind of how do we make things, not only how do we plan better and save better, but then how do we make things cheaper so that if Caitlin doesn't eat her vegetables and I haven't saved as much as I should have, my housing is not going to bankrupt me either way, and it's
Right.
going to be it's going to kind of not be so much of a financial burden.
Yeah, and I hope that with that will come a societal shift where we're not necessarily, blaming people for not having those resources when they're older. I mean, I have to think about just and I do want to get to the housing subject because this is a great example of it, where we've had, people who are in assistive housing situations today, older, generally would have had pensions. That does not exist today. We've had, events like the recession of '08, '09, or what have you, that wiped out a lot of equity. We've got student loan debt that keeps people from being savers, and then we have a workforce which tends to kind of limit people as they work in their 60s and 70s. Those are productive years that could be used for saving and that future preparation. So you're definitely blazing a trail early on these things, but these are very, very important questions. And you're right, the cost of housing is increasing. The cost of owning a house is increasing. So what we're saying is, at United Church Homes, we're very compelled by this idea of middle market because, we're an operator of affordable housing properties for older adults. We operate middle market housing, and we recognize that there is a whole huge cohort of people that will want to and need to move into a more supportive environment, but they will not be able to qualify for a Medicaid program, which is where we see that benefit today. So, designing and standing up new types of middle market properties, and believe me, we can't make them fast enough, and we are looking around supporting people as they age in home with technologies and services. And I think we have some very clever solutions there, much of which has been captured in the report that we helped you guys make last year. But why did you guys decide that last year was going to be all about housing? I mean, it doesn't seem like a natural fit with the 4 areas you talked about before, Lauren. Yet, as we look into it, of course, it's a fit. So, can you just take us through that decision process?
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that comes through in the report, but that also is a part of that integrated care area
Yes.
that we talked about, right? Because we're seeing this convergence, right, of healthcare, of supportive services, and of community or housing, right? And how all those 3 things come together to enable people to live well in the place they call home. And oftentimes, senior housing is sitting in the middle of all 3 of those things. And so that's really how it can come together and how we can figure out how to make better outcomes for people with their health and with their financial well-being. And in terms of just how did we get to this specific project, right? Caitlin had earlier mentioned that we did some previous work on long-term care financing and delivery. And then that project led us to a different one, evolution with a report that came out in 2022 about advancing tech-enabled health and home care, right? Because we're seeing this growing together of the healthcare and the home care, and how is technology driving that and potentially a cost modifier. And in that work, we really dug and uncovered and found that systems change around this idea that these 3 things are growing together, and that we're seeing many more health plans thinking about social determinants of health, and really a blossoming in the number of people who are interested in how these things fit together. That project led us to say we need to pick back up some of that previous work with our fantastic partners, National Investment Center for Seniors Housing and Care and CVS Health, who we had right in our network, to say, we think this is something that we can do together and that is timely. Because part of it is about timely, right? Are there ripe ideas? Is there right real feeling in the room that we could make a difference? And I think, right, when you do things like go to CES and see the Age Tech Collaborative and right, the Samsung Health House, looking at how we put all these things together to make people's environments that support health and well-being and aging and community, right? You can see that there's a huge, right, interest, there's action, there's a scrum around it about how can we solve these issues, because partly people feel like they're finding solutions, and we wanted to get everyone together to elevate some of them that we're focused on, right, both the financial side of housing and also how we integrate care in new ways that addresses both costs and improving outcomes.
And I was so glad to see that, you guys were really focusing on middle income housing as a subject this past year. And we had such a terrific time working with you and so many others to really dive into this. We know that at least at United Church Homes, middle income housing is important to us because we see every day as an affordable housing operator as well, people who simply cannot afford to move into middle income that cannot also qualify for Medicare, and that's only going to increase over time. So that leads to, of course, a lot of conversation about what new housing options are available because people need to move oftentimes because they just simply can't live at home anymore, or the tech solutions to enable somebody to age at home until the point, or at least delay that move into senior housing and save all that costs. And it makes perfect sense to me that health plans are really interested in this because, I'm going to quote, we have an affiliation with CareSource. Erica Craig likes to say that once people are housed, everything else seems to fall into place. It's you're not couch serving, you're not staying with family, it's just so more and better opportunity for housing is important. We did a lot of work last year, and I think we put out a terrific report. So first of all, for either of you, can you tell us where we can find that report? And second of all, maybe just a few of the recommendations that were discovered, and put out there as a result of all the great collaboration that we had.
Certainly. So definitely go to our website, milkeninstitute.org.
And has a website? Okay, good to know.
You can find the report there, and certainly on our LinkedIn and our Twitter and any social media that you follow, you'll find the report. I think what we're most excited about is, as we were talking at the beginning about this intersection of health and finance and aging and finance, is that there's a sort of virtuous circle of kind of housing as healthcare and people needing to have access to safe, affordable housing. At the same time, the people who are providing the housing also benefit from you being healthy. And so I think it is that virtuous cycle that we were trying to really dive into and then try to leverage to say, let's get more investment into affordable care and housing, because that benefits us as humans, but it also benefits the people who are providing it and investing in it. And so, coming from it, as we've been talking about, the challenge of this middle market, and for those who don't qualify for Medicaid, and for those who don't have an income bracket that would qualify for what we call a low income housing tax credit from the HUD side of the government, this band of maybe 80 to 120%, what they call area median income. How do you have those people have access to affordable options when they certainly, for the most part, most of us can't afford luxury and don't want to spend down? And so I think, what we found were that you can look at this in two ways. How do you manage the cost of the housing, the real estate itself? And then how do you manage the cost of care? And to be honest, I would say as a finance person, we were very excited to focus on some of the housing costs. And then, the folks like you, Mike, who were saying to us, listen, focusing on just the housing is helpful, but marginally impactful at best, because a lot of the cost is actually on the care side. So we're trying to do both. We're trying to look at the housing and the real estate as well as the care, fully acknowledging that the majority of the costs are on the care side in terms of what makes it so much more challenging for providers. And so I think, coming out of COVID, coming out of, hopefully out of at some point, this interest rate environment that we're in, there are a lot of challenges in terms of supply chain issues and financing issues, where it's now a ripe time for people to look at properties that may not have been successful coming out of the pandemic or haven't been successful for decades. And maybe there's a time now to really build this middle income focus. So a couple of our solutions really did end up looking at kind of that cost of real estate, that cost of housing. And so one of the things we're most excited about is this idea of a social enterprise that would be similar to a land trust, where those properties that perhaps were higher, kind of luxury market, some might have been middle income, perhaps didn't make it through COVID, or, coming out of the pandemic, maybe had some challenges in terms of being run down, haven't had the operations and maintenance that they should have. And so they really need some support because they can't compete. They don't have the latest technology. They don't have the latest services. And so can we take those properties and with a group of experts really help to make them, kind of have a better kind of appeal for the middle market, as well as help rehab them financially and provide some capital to really get them to a place of stability, both in terms of operations and finance. So we're very excited about some of the outcomes there around this kind of land trust model. But there's also, I think we've been talking about, who funds this, who invests in this? Well, first of all, more people should. Not enough people, I guess, is the answer. We need more people to invest in this middle income, segment of the population. And so we're trying to provide options through the recommendations for people to allocate capital. So if you're saying, hey, I'm an investor, I care about real estate, but I also care about health because I understand that there's an economic component to that. How do I allocate funds? So we have other recommendations of, different types of revolving loan funds and impact first funds, where if investors have an interest in providing capital that can make them the return they're looking for, but also have this social impact, there is a vehicle there for them to easily allocate capital. So those recommendations, we really focused on, can we help existing buildings that are, or operators that are challenged financially or operationally? Can we try to engage new investors by creating these kind of opportunities and these models to allocate capital? Then there's the big piece of it, which is the care side. And since that's the harder part, I'm going to give that to Lauren to answer because that's a bigger challenge. But we do have recommendations as well to think about how do you manage the cost of care side. So Lauren, take the hard vegetable question.
We do. We do have recommendations here that we're really excited about. And partly it's because we saw a lot of innovation amongst all the people that we were talking about, or talking with. We all are now talking about them. But so we saw this innovation, people making decentralized models that allow people to access more or less care as their needs fluctuate over time, right? And that's really important when we're thinking about the care equation, is how to get people the right amount of care at the right time, but also be able to meet them where they get to and maybe back again. And then we see people that are trying to address challenging workforce issues around, for example, not having the capacity to afford rising labor costs while still maintaining affordability for middle income older adults. And so looking at volunteerism as a way to address that. We're seeing people extend out of the four walls, and you can talk extensively of this, of a building and out into a community and leveraging existing community services as well as partnerships in healthcare. And that healthcare partnerships piece turned out to be a really big piece because it's intertwined with another piece, which is how do we figure out how we insert technology into the equation, right? To potentially modify costs on both sides, right? Around making sure people have safety and security, and we're actively monitoring chronic conditions and monitoring people's health status effectively so we can intervene once again at the right time before we see any escalation that affects people's well-being. And then there's all this other, we've talked a lot about chronic conditions and people's health status. We also need places that give people the potential for community, right? And that's why we're calling it aging in community, because purpose and engagement are powerful modifiers in our health span, right? We know that, for example, people with positive perceptions of aging, Becca Levy's research, that can have an enormous impact just on lifespan, right? Plus 7 years. And so we know that that's another important part of the equation when we're talking about health and senior housing. And that's potential upside as we talk about senior housing. And just to kind of end on one of our recommendations on this is that we took a look at this entire environment and said one thing that would help scale these partnerships, right? Partnerships with healthcare and senior housing providers and that integrate technology. We really need to understand more about the costs and the savings on both sides in a value-based care environment in order to value them in the long term and scale those types of partnerships, leveraging, right, the rise of Medicare Advantage and other risk-sharing models under Medicare. And so we decided that, along with our partners, to look at how do we launch a regional pilot and when we structure a regional pilot to generate data supporting partnerships between senior housing operators and payers in value-based care environments to really try to bridge right? Health and housing together.
Yeah, well, we probably got a natural experiment with you for you guys, given the work that we're doing with Radiant Alliance and our work with CareSource and all
Yes.
that. So we're going to live it, and just to bring both of these points together. I mean, Caitlin, when you were talking, suddenly I had this crazy idea in my head about 20 floors of the Sears Tower in Chicago being taken up with senior housing because of the commercial real estate crisis, and can we kind of reappropriate and build the bathrooms and all that to kind of get that into space? Because again, it goes back to this idea of reliable demand for something in the future. We know that people will, if the demand is 1x now, it'll be 12x in 2040. So I mean that's a good financial case. And then Lauren, I think what was really kind of wonderful about our discovery is that a lot of these care solutions are actually not as complex as people think.
Yeah.
I know there's the Institute of Aging out in San Francisco that I believe makes 100,000 phone calls a year just to check in on people with no agenda at all. No, how are you feeling? No, are you in any pain? Did you sleep well? Just checking in. And guess what? Emergency room visits go down. And because that's the biggest slice of Medicare spending, just moving it a little saves a lot. So I have a very hopeful a perception of where we can go with this. I do feel like there are solutions out there. I feel that there's logical solutions out there against a big opportunity for capital return. So and also you're not just bringing this to life through pilot projects. You're actually you're launching something new with the National Investment Center. So that was a big outcome of last year about this project. Can you talk a little bit about what's happening with Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're so excited that 2024 will see us launch a partnership with Nick, and it'll be termed the Aging Innovation Collaborative. And really, it aims to improve the well-being of older adults through better healthcare, housing, and community engagement. Really, we're trying to pioneer groundbreaking ideas and do research tailored for immediate application and actionability. We're committing to accelerating innovation in aging, and the AIC will work to foster cross-industry, as we keep saying, that multi-sector approach, innovation, collaborations, and offer tailored advisory services and other new services that really will have a dual purpose goal. And that's to nurture faster innovation and develop a self-sustaining economic model that'll help us do more research faster to scale, launch, and get more innovation out there. And so we're really excited for the power that this has to help us go faster, farther together, right? And so we're looking forward to launching that later this year and hope to maybe be back here with you.
That's well, and I was going to ask you, give me your fantasy headline for 5 years out or 10 years out. Give me your version of we've discovered roasted cauliflower with paprika on top, and now we're eating our cauliflower.
You might have been at home in my recipes. Smoked paprika on cauliflower is really where it's at. It's really good.
I know, right?
But really, I think that our report, which is Innovative Financing and Care Models to Scale Affordable Housing Solutions for Middle-Income Older Adults, to get that long name out there.
Say that again. Say that again.
One more time. I'm going to show you.
Google it. Yes.
This is
All
it.
Right. I'm going to read it out for listeners. So put it up to the camera so video people can see it. So for audio people, download this report. Okay, January 2024. We are recording this at the end of February 2024. This is the Milken Institute's Financial Innovations Lab, Innovative Financing and Care Models to Scale Affordable Housing Solutions for Middle-Income Older Adults. I did that in my radio voice. I hope you could hear it. My mom tells me I speak too fast. She's the only listener for this show. Mom, I hope that you got that.
Thank you for that spot, because that really gets us to right where what headlines we want in 5 years. And I think that these are consensus-built recommendations, and they have a lot of legs, right? And we're already seeing, fruits of the efforts paying off, right? We're seeing people in the industry take up some of these, and we're excited for that action. I know, Caitlin, you've been working closely with some folks on one of them, and they're off to the races, right?
Yeah, I would say I think what we found is we really are so appreciative of the fact that this platform allows us to kind of crowdsource these recommendations, and then the crowd really is excited to move them forward. And so we're seeing some lenders and some kind of existing entities in the space who are willing, especially on the kind of land trust social enterprise model, to really pick that up and run with it. Because as I said, coming out of the pandemic, there really are properties that are underwater at this point, and so there's an immediate kind of short-term need for the solution, but there's also that can lead to a medium and long-term solution to build out this kind of option for middle-income adults. And so I think we're excited about that. We're excited about we've had different nonprofit providers and for-profit kind of providers and operators come to us saying, hey, what is this about kind of social impact and trying to attract new investors, and can we do some type of bond model? So we actually have had a lot of interest from a variety of different stakeholders, from lenders to operators, saying, how can we move these forward? So we're very excited, and hopefully it won't take 5 years, and hopefully we will all have eaten the delicious cauliflower before that.
That's so awesome. And guys, I'm just so thankful to have had you both on the podcast today. I think we should be doing this on an annual basis. I think we should be seeing how the needle moves on this. And and before we end the show, we do have 3 questions that we like to ask our guests about their own experiences with aging. And we can do round robin or however you might like, or we might just pick on one or both of you. I'm not sure. But just to reiterate, we read out the title of the study. I'm not going to do that again. Milken Foundation website is where you can pick it up and read it. Lots of great insights, and we hope that you will send thoughts on that back to us, and we can hear all your good ideas. So, is it okay to ask my aging questions?
Go for it.
Okay. All right. Question number 1. For either of you, when you think about how you've aged, what do you think has changed about you or grown with you that you really like about yourself?
I have really appreciated cultivation of patience. I really look back and see enormous growth in myself about being able to sit back, look through multiple lenses, understand other people's perspectives around a table, and really to try to find sort of meaningful solutions that meet a lot of needs. And that can help with creativity. And so I didn't expect that as I aged, I would feel like I was a better critical thinker, right? But I really do feel like over time, that's improving, partly because I have the patience to sit back and watch some things unfold and try to make different connections in my head that I might have before. And I only think that's going to get better. And so I'm actually really excited for what I might write in 30 years or 40 years. And I'm still going to think this report is very good that we're talking about, but who knows? Maybe 40 years from now, I'm, whole new ballgame.
Reverend Beth will tell you, people over 65 are the most creative people out there. So I think you've got lots of room out there. Caitlin, either the previous question or this next one, because I know we're running into time. How about this? I'll pick on you. Hey, Caitlin, what has surprised you the most about you as you've aged?
I would say that, unlike Lauren, I am a New Yorker, so I never had patience to begin with. So that was never something that was going to grow with me. You know what? I think that what's surprised me the most is, how easy it is to now set up boundaries, because you know what you want and you know what you need in your life. And I would say, as you're younger, kind of you look at it and you're like, I'm afraid to say no, or I'm afraid to say yes, or I don't want to, kind of make anyone uncomfortable. And I think that, kind of surprising. And I've always been that sort of person. And so as I've gotten older, I'm like, wow, this is actually surprisingly simple to just start saying no to things or to start saying yes. We should live in yes, I guess. But to start saying, this is what I'm going to be, working on, or this is what I'm going to care about. This is how I'm going to build my family, or this is where I'm going to live. Like, I think that just, you hear all the time people say, oh, when I get into my 40s or 50s or 60s, I feel so much more comfortable in my skin and I can say these types of things. And it's one of those, kind of pieces of advice that you hear and you're like, yeah, that's probably not at all true. It's actually surprisingly true. Like, wow, I am able to kind of create these boundaries and create that life that I'm looking for and feel okay about saying that out loud.
I love that, and I think that's such a terrific thought. Okay, so for either of you, last question: is there someone that you've met or been in your life that has inspired you to age with abundance? Has kind of like a good example for you in aging? I want to be like that person when I grow up.
So I will just say, I know Lauren has a good example. So I'm going to say very quickly, because it's sort of cliche, that it's my grandmother Audrey. But I'll tell you why, not just because she was cool, but because my grandmother was an opera singer when she was a teenager. And then she gave birth to 10 children. And so she clearly was not an opera singer for a very long time because she birthed and raised 10 children. And so she kind of gave that up. And when all the kids were out of the house, she actually was like, you know what? It's an encore career in a different way. I'm going back. And I'm going to pursue my opera career, pursue a theatrical career, get my headshots, get my agent, get all of these things that I need to start performing again. She never really gave that up, despite the fact that that generation needed to give up, kind of having a career just for staying home. And so it was always very inspirational to me as a child to see that, something that you love and a passion that you have never really goes away. And it doesn't matter what age you are, you can always achieve those dreams. So that's what I would say.
I love that. Lauren?
Me too. I have had really the benefit of a happenstance intergenerational program, which is my local community garden, right? If you would have asked me 15 years ago, Lauren, do you want a 96-year-old best friend? I don't think I would have lined up in the 96-year-old best friend community program line. But I showed up one day doing a work project on community gardens, and I had somebody say, well, if you really would like to see how this place works, why don't you come do some work? And so that was my invitation. And it was an invitation to an incredible relationship with a person that really, to me, is living abundant aging, because he is really putting into action, one, purpose, and two, grace in aging, right? Because I have a photo of him from 7 years ago, age, right, 88, standing with power drill on top of a raised garden bed, installing an arbor. And that's not where we're at today. But I haven't heard him once say, I really need to be able to do that, or I miss that, or my life isn't living if I can't do that. He's sorting seeds, and we're making interesting crosses of different types of beans we like to grow, and making really perfect tomatoes year in, year out. And so he's finding things that include joy as our bodies inevitably change and our capacities change. And that's one thing as an athletic person, it's worried me. But the fact that he can say, I'm changing and it's okay, and I'm helping other people find joy, because that's the other thing, is he is sharing mentorship, expertise, and his time very generously on a daily basis with an array of people of different ages and interests at our garden. And so I just, if you're talking about 5-year goals, I really hope to see and get more growth of intergenerational programming that helps bring the generations together, that gives an opportunity for generativity, right? The giving of one generation to another, and that really actually has great connection to purpose and well-being. And we need more opportunities for that. So I'm excited for it, and it's made my life better.
And what I say, that, and the example you share, I mean, that's normal. Having a 96-year-old doing community gardening, that's normal. There are,
and his name
having
is
a 96-year-old golfer, that's normal. These are this is it's not, you don't need to do something fantastic to prove that you're aging well, or skydive or whatever. This is normal stuff. So I just, gratitude to you for bringing that example to life, Laura, and gratitude to you, Caitlin, for the wonderful examples that you shared. It's so inspiring. Your grandma is so inspiring. 10 kids.
Right?
And
Audrey,
I think
Audrey and Richard.
I mean, yeah. It's just, she ate her vegetables. I'm going to be honest, Mike, she ate her vegetables. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
10 kids. Yeah.
I'm sure that she did. God bless her. But gratitude and thanks most of all to the listeners, and thank you for tuning into this episode of The Art of Aging, which is part of the Abundant Aging podcast series from United Church Homes. And we want to hear from you. You know, what solutions are you thinking about to address our future costs of long-term care? What do you think about the connection between housing and health? Who is your abundant aging hero? We want to hear from you. So visit us at www.abundantagingpodcast.com to give us your feedback. You can hear all of our other episodes there. You can also visit YouTube and search under United Church Homes, and also on Spotify if you search Abundant Aging Podcast. Thanks again to Caitlin MacLean and Lauren Dunning from the Milken Institute. And please check out their website to download the report we've been talking about today. And we hope to have you join us for another episode in the future. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.